My name is Jordan Belfort. The year I turned 26, I made $49 million, which really pissed me off because it was 3 shy of $1 million a week.
We're making a name for ourselves.
Nobody knows if the stock is gonna go up, down, sideways, or in circles. You know what a fugazi is?
Oh, Fugazi, it's fake.
Yeah, fugazi, fugazi, it's a wazi, it's a woozy, it's a fairy dust.
Was all this legal? Absolutely not. We were making more money than we knew what to do with.
We don't work for you, man.
You have my money taped to your boobs. Technically, you do work for me.
What's wrong, Daddy?
But watch it, you bring it home.
Oh my God.
FBI, any kind of booze you might want?
No, the Bureau forbids us from drinking.
Duh.
So follow me, you could about to go. I'm doing 500, I'm out of control. But there's nowhere to go, and there's no way to slow. If I knew what I knew in the past, I would have been like that on your.
How does this actually work?
There's a big money sign.
They get launched at the time, they stick.
This is their gift, okay? They're built to be thrown like a lawn dart.
Stop. Okay?
Safety first.
Safety is first. We don't want to get a bad reputation.
In the morning, and I'm zoning, I think I'm possessed. It's an omen, I keep it 300, like the Romans, 300. Where the Trojans, baby, be living in the moment. I've been a menace for the longest, and you know it, and you know it, and you know it, and you know
Mm-hmm. Come on. Yeah.
You've just had a first look at The Wolf of Wall Street. In a sudden twist, it seems the great Gatsby himself, Leonardo DiCaprio, has gone from partying in the 20s to partying in the 90s, both to the soundtrack of Kanye West. The Wolf of Wall Street is an upcoming biographical black comedy film directed by Martin Scorsese, based on the memoir of the same name by Jordan Belfort. The screenplay was written by Terrence Winter, and the film stars Leonardo DiCaprio as Belfort, along with other cast members including Jonah Hill, Jean Dujardin, Rob Reiner, Kyle Chandler, and Matthew McConaughey. Among others, The Wolf of Wall Street makes a 5th collaboration between Scorsese and DiCaprio. It also marks Winter's debut as a feature film screenwriter. The Wolf of Wall Street is set to hit theaters November 15th. Now, they say good things comes in threes, and after a couple of months of studio renovation, we're back up and running for the 3rd episode of Picture Lock. We'll review Man of Steel and take it back to 1978 Superman with film enthusiast Chris Oxenford and fellow WAFCA film critic Jeffrey K. Lyles. I'll also talk to film enthusiast Bill Calder about Cinemascope, all ahead on Picture Lock.
My name is General Zod. I have journeyed across an ocean of stars to reach you. Your world has sheltered one of my citizens. He will look like you, but he is not one of you. To those of you who know of his location, the fate of your planet rests in your hands. To Kal-El, I say this. Surrender within 24 hours, or watch this world suffer the consequences.
every human you save, we will kill 1 million more.
I won't betray them.
You already have.
My co-critics for today is film enthusiast Chris Oxenford. I also have via telephone fellow Washington, D.C. Area Film Critic Association member Jeffrey K. Lyles. Fellas, thanks for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
Sure thing.
Superman, perhaps one of the most iconic superheroes around the world. From the comics to TV shows to movies, the brand has continued to grow since its creation in 1933. I've always said that Superman makes a poor cinematic character because he's an alien with no weaknesses except for kryptonite or people he loves. The 2006 Superman Returns proved my theory, and here we have a new and improved version with Man of Steel. So, gentlemen, I ask you, what is it about this story that makes this a better film? Chris, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think you pointed out what the biggest flaw with a cinematic Superman movie is, that he doesn't really have any weaknesses. I mean, he's practically a god. He can fly, he's invulnerable. And this movie actually creates stakes for him that he actually has to struggle to achieve. I think the biggest thing for me that worked really well was that they did away with kryptonite. So it wasn't just a bunch of random glowing rocks.
Right.
And then, of course, the villain of the film, General Zod, has all the same powers that Superman does. So suddenly he's not just struggling against, you know, a normal human like Lex Luthor.
Right.
He's actually got a villain that can hold his own against Superman.
Right, definitely. Jeffrey, what do you think?
I'm going to piggyback a lot of what Chris just said. The main thing is, had 5 Superman movies so far, and in all but Superman 4, Superman's been fighting against Lex Luthor in some variation, and they always have packed in some kryptonite. The 2 where we didn't have that were Superman 2 and Man of Steel.
Right.
And anytime you get Superman just slugging it out with people, that's what people want to see. It's the reason why the Marvel movies have worked so well. They have a vulnerability to get in the hero, to become the hero. Then they got someone to knock out. It wouldn't be much fun if Superman just came to a point where he's raising up another island or lifting up the Daily Planet. And this time he's blowing up a bunch of stuff, slugging it out. And that's what people wanted to see for a long time.
Right, definitely. And Christopher Nolan came up with the story along with David S. Goyer. And we know Goyer penned the screenplay. You can see some of the similarities that Batman Begins has with Man of Steel since it was written by the same person. And trying to go for that minimalist, complex character, simple story. What did you guys think about the use of the flashbacks in the film to tell the origin of Superman? Because in the beginning we have a good, it's like a good 15-minute opening on Krypton, and then from there it actually goes, we cut to 33-year-old, Superman, and we also see, from there we see everything that has happened up until then through flashbacks, a lot like Batman Begins. What did you guys think about that? Jeffrey, I'll go with you first.
I'm a huge Lost fan, so I love flashbacks and telling stories on how a character got to a certain point. And I was really glad that we didn't go from Krypton to naked baby Clark Kent running around with Mom Pa Kent, and we got to actually see him immediately transition from an adult after we left Krypton, and then kind of fill in the beliefs to see how it got there. I thought that was a much stronger way of telling the story. Everybody knows the basic background of Superman, so they didn't have to retell it from teenager to getting into the Daily Planet. I like the way they set it up.
Right. Chris, what did you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Jeffrey just said. And I liked also that the flashbacks in some ways seemed to tie in with what was going on in the present story. So, we see Superman struggling and suddenly he's flashing back to that one time, back in Kansas when he couldn't save his father, or when he was picked on or had to pick up the bus. It creates sort of, you can see what the character, it almost puts you inside the character's head.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I enjoyed the flashbacks to an extent. I did feel as though this film was a little bit too long. And in many ways, I felt like some of the, we could have done with like one less, flashback. But at the same time, I did appreciate it. I did think there was a few, frames in which it just totally reminded me of Batman Begins. I mean, literally, like the thumb up trying to, catch a ride, or, that whole traveling through the mountains. That part was a little, but at the same time, I do appreciate how the flashbacks did push the story forward. The film is a big departure from the usual origin story of Superman, with the lack of the Fortress of Solitude and the use of Jor-El as a constant voice throughout the film. How do you guys think the changes work for the film? Because, if you listen to different blogs, some people are saying that the ship that he found is actually, Supergirl's ship. So, it leads to what can happen in the future. What did you guys think about that? Chris, I'll start with you.
Well, I'm not sure the ship is going anywhere in the future, considering where it is at the end of the movie. But I did like how they used Jor-El. I like that he wasn't just like a huge floating hologram head and didn't disappear after that one little scene. And they really did an excellent job of building up his character as well.
Yeah, definitely. Jeffrey, what do you think?
Let's see. Well, DC scrapped the whole Superman origin with the revamped the universe, so it's kind of hard to go, well, this isn't like the comic book anymore, because the comic book isn't like the comic books from years ago. So, in a lot of its ways, they revamped all this to make it easier to tell the comic book stories to the audience that watches the movies and then wants to see the comic book that inspired it. So I thought this was a nice clean slate to retell Superman for the movie audience who wants to then keep reading more in the comic book. And I like Jor-El. When I was watching through the old Superman, I wasn't really that enthused with watching Marlon Brando. It seemed like he was sleepwalking through it.
Right.
Russell Crowe was really strong, and when he, after his stay on Krypton, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it, but it was cool getting a chance to see more of that character interact with Clark and on Earth and all that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I too appreciated the fact that the way that Jor-El is able to be on the ship and he's able to just talk to him, but it's not this face in the sky, Jor-El, Marlon Brando, who did dowl in his performance in the 1978 film, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But let's talk about the man himself, Henry Cavill. He's a somewhat relatively new face, having been in The Tudors and lead in Immortals. But what did you guys think about Cavill here in Man of Steel? Jeffrey?
He's been somebody I've been kind of watching since he was in Count of Monte Cristo. He was the son, and I really liked him in that. And so when I heard that he was going to be Superman, I was really excited because he was going to get this big spotlight. And I thought he did a great job. He really made you feel for Clark Kent's Superman in a different way than Christopher Reeve. They wasn't just trying to imitate him. And he wasn't Brandon Roth. He made the character his own in a nice, different way that audiences can relate to without having to be the bumbling, jokester like Clark Kent has to be sometimes.
Yeah. Chris, what do you think?
I couldn't agree more. I felt like he was a much of an improvement over Brendan Ruth in Superman Returns, and he wasn't trying to channel Christopher Reeve down to like not even having the cowlick that is such a common image of Superman, and that they changed up his costume and his performance. I think it really created it let us feel like it was a separate universe, and he did. I totally agree. He made the role his own.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree with you guys. I mean, I think that he added a complex layer to the character, which is always refreshing. And Jeffrey, you kind of brought up, the surrounding co-stars. But, to me, I feel like, don't be fooled. Man of Steel is the tale of a lost soul. and the influence of two parental structures on him as he reaches a fork in the road of life. With Russell Crowe, Ayelet Zur, Diane Lane, and Kevin Costner playing Superman's Kryptonian and earthly parents. Guys, how powerful was the development of his parents' influence in the film? Jeffrey, I think you kind of talked about it a little bit, just in terms of Russell Crowe and Kevin Costner. But what did you guys think about how the parents, as you alluded to before, weren't just these old Smallville people that took him in, and all that kind of stuff?
I thought we got to see them as real people. They weren't these perfect, wholesome, square parents who were raising perfect Boy Scout. Pocket, and this one raises the question of, hey, well, maybe sometimes you will have to let people go in order to accomplish a larger purpose. You kind of see that during the big fight in Metropolis, where he's not worrying about making sure the cat's out of the tree when Zod's coming through. He's just trying to take Zod out. And so he's focused on the larger picture. And his parents have him, through the different ways of communicating with him, kind of instill that, hey, you're here for a real purpose, and it's not just to be the smiling poster boy for all things great and super heroic, but be something, be something greater, be something larger than just another regular guy. And I thought they did a great job with him on that.
Right. Yeah, I definitely felt like, as a parent, for me personally, I felt like, they were really being just parents. Like Ayelet, she sold it for me as Lara L. In the beginning. It really looked like a mother that was never going to be able to, call her son's name or, just be able to meet him. So I felt like they gave a lot more depth to the parents, which really helped to give, Superman a lot more depth as well. Michael Shannon, as always, he did a standout performance as Zod. Chris, what did you think about Michael Shannon's performance?
I thought he almost stole the show. I mean, he gave General Zod a depth that Zod didn't really have when he appeared in Superman 2, where he was kind of the cardboard cutout kneel before Zod kind of character. Where Michael Shannon, you see that he has a motive and he has reasons for what he's doing, even if what he's doing is really, really terrible. And I think that's really when they create the best villain, is when you can see that he's justified in his own mind. Right.
Jeffrey, what did you think about Michael Shannon?
I thought he was great. However, I'm really biased to Terrence Stamp. I thought he was the prototypical comic book movie bad guy. And Michael Shannon, what I liked about him was he didn't make Zod the sympathetic bad guy. You're like, oh, poor misunderstood Zod. It was, okay, this guy has some serious stuff, but he is such a bad guy because he's trying to wipe out a ton of people to accomplish it. So I thought that was good because it wasn't, he's just a regular comic book movie bad guy. He's a bad guy, but he had a little bit more depth to him than normal.
Right, definitely. Yeah, Michael Shannon, he's always able to sell. He could sell ice to Eskimo. All right, so there's another character in the film that has to be mentioned, and I think that's Hans Zimmer's score, which is incredible. What did you guys think about the departure from John Williams' score? Jeffrey, what did you think?
If you bring that John Williams score into it, then you're just setting yourself up to be compared to the Richard Donner's Richard Lester version. So coming up with something fresh, coming up with something different is essential to making it work. And it doesn't have that same, but it's something different. And it's majestic, and it's Superman, and it's something new, which we needed for this. And it worked, because it didn't feel familiar.
Right. Yeah. What did you think about that, Chris?
That's exactly. I totally agree that if they had gone with the John Williams score, it would have been just like, it's still a Christopher Reeve movie.
Right. Definitely. Well, this is director Zack Snyder's sixth feature. Do you think Snyder's body of work is now placing himself in the category of a director to watch? And will he be DC's go-to guy, as Warner Bros. Seems to have be able to vary their directors in terms of, their whole rollout of comic films? Chris, what do you think?
Well, I think Zack Snyder's definitely established himself as sort of the go-to comic book guy. I mean, he did Watchmen and he did 300. So, I mean, those are both really great adaptations of comic books. And he's definitely got his own sort of unique style. And so I think he's definitely got a great future in front of him.
Yeah, definitely. What was your take, Jeff?
I like Zack Snyder. He does a really good job. He's somebody I was really into the second I saw Dawn of the Dead, the remake. And I think he has a nice sense of the ensemble action pieces. There are a couple rumors going around that he's going to be tabbed to do Justice League. And after the big action that he did on Man of Steel, I couldn't imagine what he could do to top it. But if anybody could, he'd be great to see Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash, and fight it out with whoever.
Yeah.
So, looking forward to seeing what he's going to do next.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think this is a good. I think it's a good reboot. I think that it brought respect back to the franchise. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. All right, before we get out of here, Jeffrey Lyles, any final thoughts on Man of Steel?
Great, go see it. It was a perfectly timed release for Father's Day weekend, but it's a nice story. It's different than you've seen before. And it's a different comic book movie than you've seen before. And it's able to combine the depth and the storytelling of the Christopher Nolan Batman films with the city smashing, big Duke 'em out fight in the end like Avengers. So it's a nice mix and hybrid of the two.
Yeah, Jeffrey, all right, so before you get out of here, tell people where they can find your reviews.
They can check me out at JeffreyKLylesMovieFiles.com or you can follow me on Twitter at LylesMovieFiles. And, search me up on there.
All right, man. Well, Chris and I, we're going to finish discussing Man of Steel, but thanks for coming on the show.
Definitely. I'll make sure to come through again sometime. Thanks for having me.
All right, man.
Take care, Chris.
My pleasure. Talk to you later.
Bye.
All right, Chris. So as we finish this out, the only last question is in terms of the final action battle, climactic scene. A lot has been said about that, just in terms of how kind of over the top it is in a sense. Did you think it was a little too much? Because we're going to compare the 1978 film and just talk about how the lack of visual effects and what that did. But what did you think?
I thought the big battle in Metropolis worked really well. I got a little bit uncomfortable. It felt a lot like they were using almost 9/11 imagery, with the big buildings coming down and people getting buried under the rubble and other people having to dig them out. It felt a lot like they were like, oh, this is DC Earth's 9/11, which I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I felt like it was a little overkill. That was another section that I felt was just like, okay, you could have cut a little bit out. It's like one of those things where, like in The Matrix Reloaded, when the guy dies and then he comes back again. Are you serious? We're gonna fight some more?
Yeah.
But I did think that it was awesome, and it shows how far cinema has come in terms of special effects. And it really did look like super fast people fighting.
Yeah.
And like you alluded to in the beginning, I just think it was great that he was actually fighting against someone that had, equal strength versus, Lex Luthor and Krypton, right. the usual. So let's take a little break, and then we will come back and talk about 1978's Superman.
Okay.
Even though you've been raised as a human being, you are not one of them.
And there's one thing I do know, son, and that is you are here for a reason.
A good reporter doesn't get great stories, Jimmy.
A good reporter
makes them great.
Lois Lane, say hello to Clark Kent.
Well.
Any more at home like you?
Not really, no.
I want the name of this flying whatchamacallit to go with the Daily Planet like bacon and eggs. I want the real story. I want the inside dope on this guy.
Easy, miss. I've got you.
You've got me. Who's got you? What's your background? Where do you hail from?
Well, it's kind of hard to explain, actually. See, I come from a planet called Krypton.
Huh?
Now looking at Superman, it's long for all the wrong reasons, yet in its time, it was what Man of Steel is today. I think it's fair to say that the film made Superman the movie to see spawning 3 sequels and Supergirl. Superman doesn't really get heated up until an hour into the movie, if you can call it that. The first hour is origin and young Clark backstory. But understanding that it's an older film, Chris, how do you think the origin story plays out? Because it's essentially almost like 2 films in one.
Well, yeah, the first hour is basically the Krypton and Jonathan Kent story. It doesn't really focus on Superman. You don't even see Superman until almost an hour in. I had to check the time code on my DVD player to make sure I was watching the right movie.
Right. Wow. So wait, are you serious? Like the little boy running on the train, like
yeah. That
really?
You don't see his costume until an hour in. It's after the time skip where Jor-El is like educating him in the Fortress of Solitude.
Right.
That time skip happens at exactly an hour.
And didn't you think it's so interesting that he had to be educated for 12 years?
Yeah, I feel like the timing is a little weird in this movie because it's like, he's educated for 12 years and supposedly Jor-El's been dead for, he says thousands of years.
Right.
But Lex Luthor figures out that Krypton exploded in 1948.
Yeah.
So when exactly is this movie set?
Right. I definitely thought that was a little strange that the timing, like you said, it was just a little bit off, but hey, we'll go with it. I mean, I think in part they also wanted to be able to show young Lois Lane on the train with her parents as, the man that she's going to meet later, runs past super fast. I can't say enough about how the exposition is in this one. But for the sake of it's 1978, I do think it must have been amazing,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because like nowadays it's like we don't need as much. I think we're a much smarter audience. You don't have to give us breadcrumbs. We get it. Plus, we know the origin story. So.
Right, and I mean in 1978, how many people? I mean, it would have been the comic book enthusiasts who would have known that origin story, and this is sort of the origin story for the rest of us. And it's
right.
It's telling that this is the version of the origin story that all the other Superman origin stories are compared to, and to the point that DC actually, when they went back and rebooted Superman, they made Jor-El look more like Marlon Brando.
Really?
Yeah.
In this one, in Superman Returns or in
in the comics when Superman 78 came out, they went back and made Jor-El look more like Marlon Brando.
Huh. See, that's why this guy is on the show, because he knows stuff like that I don't know, and that's great. So let's talk about story for a moment. This film really spells out what's happening. As we said, the 78 version of Superman fights for truth, justice, and the American way. So do you think that the virtuous Boy Scout version of Superman is better, or the more complex 2013 Superman?
Well, I'm from 2013, so to me, I think the darker version works better, but I imagine that in 1978, what you wanted to see was good versus evil and the Boy Scout. I mean, that sort of, it fits with the times, because, you've got the Cold War and the good United States versus the evil Soviet Empire, that whole kind of thing.
Right.
So it was a much more binary worldview in 1978, where now it's, we like complexity. We like to almost see our heroes not be perfect.
Right, definitely. And not only that, I do think that in many ways, because of the success of The Dark Knight, we enjoy seeing a fallible, darker superhero rather than just, this virtuous Boy Scout. Because, Superman really, he was like Honest Abe. He says at one point, I can't lie or whatever, and
Right.
yeah, like you said, it's probably 1978, and just if you think about how far we've come in terms of just like TV in general and what you can allow on TV, so back then, it kind of makes sense that he might not be, as complex as a character today.
In a world where Game of Thrones is showed regularly on Sunday night, I'm
Right.
not sure the Boy Scout flies as much anymore.
Right, definitely. Christopher Reeve must have been pretty charming as the bumbling Clark Kent and suave Superman. After watching his performance recently, it almost reminds me of Steve Urkel versus Stefan Urkel. What about Reeve's performance made him an icon in the role?
I think Christopher Reeves is just so charming. I mean, even I'm a guy, and I found him charming. And, I totally understand, what was going through Lois's mind.
Right.
And I think it's especially impressive that he doesn't. There's the scene in her apartment where he takes off his glasses for a moment, and it's like Superman is standing in Clark Kent's suit.
Right.
And you can actually see how people can look at Clark and not see Superman. So it deals with that sort of age-old problem of how does just a pair of glasses make someone look different.
Right.
And it speaks to Christopher Reeve's ability that he can sell that.
Right, definitely. And as I watched it, I was just like, man, Clark was so lame. He was, a square. He's clumsy. But like you said, that moment in the apartment, which maybe we can talk about that a little bit, but you literally see him raise up like this with the glasses off, and I mean just like that. It's like almost like an acting class, literally, in terms of going from one character to another, and just the range of control that he had in that scene. So I definitely, even though
his voice gets deeper, or when he goes up, he almost deepened his voice.
Right, definitely. And so even though he was a little bit clumsy and corny, I did think that it was very charming, because when he was Superman, it's almost like he winked at the camera, he just gave that little head nod. So I did like that.
And how can you not like a man who says swell? I mean, seriously.
Right, definitely. So even though the film has 5 writers on it, just as Man of Steel did, an awesome move in the beginning of the film is introducing the enemies for the Superman sequel. General Zod, Ursa, and Non swear they will take revenge before being banished. In these days, it seems like it's the opposite of that. You stick around for the end of the credits to see who the villain is in the next one. But here, the villains were, kind of alluded to in the beginning. What did you think of that move?
I mean, it's almost like the Lord of the Rings setup. I mean, they filmed these 2 movies back to back, so they knew that they were going to be able to use Terrence Stamp and Urza and Non. So it works really well to set up the sequel.
Right.
Like right there. It's just like, yep, there's the sequel.
Yeah, definitely. And to me, it's kind of mind-boggling because unfortunately the film is so long, but at the same time, like when you stop and you think about it, you're like, whoa, wait a second, they really alluded to that in the beginning, which is genius. Avengers, Joss, take note. You could do that again. It's cool. So I definitely enjoyed that. So the action or lack thereof in the 1978 Superman is definitely minuscule in comparison to Man of Steel, mainly because they lacked the graphics. It wasn't as much CG, visual effects back then. But what did you think about the action in Superman?
Oh, like you said, there's not a lot. I don't think it would have been as interesting to see Superman, punch Lex Luthor in the face, because, Lex is just a normal guy,
right,
who's completely and totally maniacally insane. But he's just a normal guy. It's much more of almost a mind game between Lex and Superman, more so than it is, about who can punch harder or fly faster.
Right. A little bit of chess going on. I did think that, surprisingly, we know that he was laying on like a piece of glass, But there were parts that, like we were discussing earlier, where like, you know, he just finished flying with Lois and he flies onto her apartment, and it's kind of like, well, where are the wires? So I do think that that's one thing that's missing from films now, is that we rely too much on computer CG versus going back to some of the practicality, because the older films, because they didn't have all of that to work with, it wasn't a crutch that you could lean on.
Right.
So I know, like, even with Fast and Furious 6, it did a little bit more of practical cars actually flipping versus, you know, just making this image, you know, in Photoshop or, you know.
Right. Yeah. You can't sell "You'll Believe a Man You Can Fly" in 2013, whereas in 1978 that was like the big draw. That was the line they used to sell the film.
Yeah, definitely.
It worked beautifully.
Yeah. So Chris, final thoughts on Superman. What do you think?
It's a good overall. It's a good film. It's a wonderful film for 1978.
Right.
I'm probably more of a fan of Man of Steel, but you know, without Superman 1978, I'm not sure we would have, you know, all the comic book movies we have today. So, in a lot of ways, we owe a big debt to Richard Donner and the Salkinds and Christopher Reeve.
Right, definitely. And I enjoy the 1978 version. I think John Williams' score is iconic. You know, you hear that score, you played it in the band, you know it. It's Superman, right?
Yep.
Well, Chris, thanks for coming on the show. It's been great talking to you.
Yep.
In our next segment, we're going to talk with Bill Calder. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The Robe, from one of the greatest novels of all time. The most inspired story of love and devotion, faith and spectacle that has ever come to life on the screen. Richard Burton as Marcellus, the man who took whatever he wanted. Gene Simmons as Lady Diana, the beauty whose fame was legend. Even pagan Rome itself gasped at their love.
I want to be your wife, whatever you believe. I'd marry you if I had to share you with 1,000 gods.
With Victor Mature as Demetrius, Michael Rennie as Peter the Big Fisherman. Here is all the sweep and spectacle, the power and grandeur of a mighty era when the word of heaven was arrayed against the sword of Rome. You will see the treachery spawned by a handful of silver, the day of Golgotha, the glory that was Rome, the invincible legions, the love that defied an empire, the torture of Demetrius, intrigue and revolt. The curse of Marcellus.
Again, thanks for tuning in to the third episode of Picture Lock, where we focus on film. Last time he was on the show, he schooled me on the process of Cinerama. This time, my sensei is here to talk Cinemascope. Bill Calder, welcome once again.
What an introduction.
Right?
I'll try. I have to make a remark about Cinerama that we did not discuss. And it ties to what we are about to discuss. We didn't discuss the sound system for Cinerama.
Okay.
It was 7 channels.
Wow.
Full record mag tracks. It was developed by a guy named Hazard Reeves in the late 40s, 51, 52, somewhere in there. Mr. Reeves also developed the sound system for Cinemascope. Cinemascope was 4. 3 across the front and 1 surround system.
one surround system as in one speaker, or surround?
Various speakers around the theater, sides and the back, but they all had the same thing. They all carried a fourth magnetic soundtrack. The front three were behind the screens, and an actor in the early films would go to the left, and the sound would go to the left. And I'll tell you where you can find it, and you've got to listen carefully, is The Sound of Music. When Julie Andrews moves, her voice moves. And particularly in the sequence. This isn't radical. It isn't, way out there. Robert Wise was such an expert. He is the American master. The British master is David Lean. Cinemascope was.
Hold on, Sensei. You're getting. I have to bring it back. Okay, so thank you, because again, this is why I enjoy when you come on the show. I get an education. So if I watch The Sound of Music, do I have to have the sound system set up, or can
Maybe you can do it with just the 2 stereo speakers. I don't know that, but it surely works with the 5.1. It surely works with that.
And you have a pretty nice sound system at home, right?
I played around.
You dibble and dabble.
I dibbled and dabbled, and it's balanced. It's a 5-channel. It's not the 9.2 and the 7.2 da da da. Most of what comes out of LA is 5.1. No matter what the original source might have been.
Okay, so for a while now, you've been talking to me about Cinemascope. So what is Cinemascope?
Cinemascope was a anamorphic lens developed in 1927 by Henri Chrétien, a French scientist in the world of optics. The lenses were developed at that time. The first film that came out was The Robe in the fall of 1953, and they used the 1927 lenses to shoot that at this other time. The magic, I said the wrong word, the real beauty of Cinemascope is how do we see things. We do not see 4:3. I'm not looking at you this way. I'm looking at you this way.
Right.
I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in this. We all see widescreen all the time. So if you can reproduce this in a movie theater, it looks like the way I see things. Anybody sees things. I would suspect even a person who had lost an eye still sees a partial wide shot.
Yeah, if we close our eye.
With respect to those folks who have lost an eye for some reason. I'm not a medical guy at all. You were about to ask me the first time I saw Cinemascope, and I must...
See why he's a sensei? He knows what I'm going to ask.
Well, we discussed this.
Go ahead.
But I have to bring up the esteemed director, Martin Scorsese. If you find a DVD of The Robe, 20th Century Fox, it's a fictional story of the robe Christ wore to the cross. That's the title. And he does a 2-minute introduction to this. And he said he went to the movies and the lights went down, and here's a big word, curtain. He said the curtain opened and opened and opened and opened and opened, and it was a totally different thing from what your television set had. He said, to quote his point, I won't even try the language the gentleman used, he says, that never left me, nor me.
So that's your first memory of Cinemascope.
It
The
is.
Robe? Did you actually saw the film?
I saw the film in a small theater in Pennsylvania, and they closed the theater for a week or 2 or some days. I don't know. I was 12 years old. Why is the casino theater closed? Something new. Then when I went to see it, and again, Mr. Cosset, the curtain opened and opened and opened and opened. And it gives you not the Cinerama stuff, but it gives you something, and it pulls you in. A recommendation to look to anybody who sees this, find a Cinemascope film from the 50s, whatever you care for, and there were a lot of them made, and look at the shot composition. I don't care whether you like the movies, the content of it, or the plot, but look at the shot composition. Maybe we can do this with any Robert Wise film, any David Lean film. I don't really care whether it was scope or 70 millimeter, all that other stuff. The one thing I would maybe want you to look at are the Star Wars films, except for number 4, The New Hope, because it was the first one that was made. All the action is in the center of the frame.
Right.
Nothing here, nothing there. In the other ones, they began to stretch out, where a person like you is on one edge of the frame and I'm on the other, and we like each other or we don't, and you know, the dialogue.
Right.
Anything other than number 4, you can do 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. Then they began to move things out.
Okay.
But if you find a film of the 50s, and I'm sorry some people wouldn't do this, a lot of them are musicals, musical numbers. But if you look at the way they were built, it was mostly 20th Century Fox. And when the Fox cameramen and directors first knew that they had something new to do with, they filled the frame. They made use of the whole thing. And those things, there is some interest in specifically the scope films of the 50s. There's MGM's, Warner shot some, mostly Fox, some Universal,
So
no Paramount.
If somebody who's watching or listening wants to check out a film, what is your favorite Cinemascope film?
It is a John Wayne film that is way out of the image of John Wayne. Over the hill, give me a gun, I'm gonna you know, all of that.
Right.
It is called The High and the Mighty. It is made by Masters. Mr. Wayne's company owned the movie. Although he distributed through Warner Brothers, it is restored. It's not yet on Blu-ray. The director is Wild Bill Wellman, William A. Wellman, who directed Wings, the first film that won the Best Picture. This is an airplane thing, and you might not like it, but Leonard Maltin did, because I've got the movie and he has this introduction. It is a drama. It is a people drama. Mr. Wayne does not carry a gun. He doesn't kill anybody, and he is not the boss. This is an airplane voyage from Honolulu to San Francisco. And if you've seen a film called Airplane, the distinguished actor Robert Stack is in that. And in that film, Mr. Stack is slapped. And it's a comedy of some kind. I never saw it. I never wanted to see it because of The High and the Mighty.
Okay.
The reason Mr. Stack gets the slap in Airplane is because of what happened in The High and the Mighty. And I'm not telling.
Okay.
And we're alive. They fill the frame. It's an airplane movie and takes place within an airplane, but they still fill the frame. Another one, a great piece of work, directed by Billy Wilder. Something Like It Hot?
Yes.
This is called The Spirit of St. Louis.
That was shot? Oh, okay, I was about to say. Okay.
This is the story of the Lindbergh flight. And you know the beginning of the movie, he took off from Long Island. The end of the movie, he landed in Paris. I gave the movie away, but you cannot fast forward that. You have to watch the whole thing. And you know the story.
Okay.
It was directed by Billy Wilder.
Okay, so you've given us a bunch of films to check out.
Right.
You brought with you, what is this?
I found this in Norfolk, down in Norfolk someplace long ago. This is a common, ordinary 35 millimeter projection lens. And in the old days, there were 2 projectors way up in the back. And this was for showing standard film. The purple is the anamorphic adapter. And all we can really do here is show and tell. But Cinemascope films were squeezed by an anamorphic lens, and then in the theater, They were spread out to that wide screen.
Does it go like this? Or
the other way.
This?
Yeah. Now you have,
Screw it on
there
there?
should be two of them, but I found one and bought it.
Okay.
But that's what comes off of a projector, kind of like, okay, I got your camera. It's kind of like this, and it may be tilted down severely, like that, toward the screen, and there'll be two of them. Anyway, just pure show and tell. Cinemascope and Cinerama were the first public demonstrations of stereophonic sound. When these came out, there were no tapes, there were no albums, there was nothing that had 2 speakers, or 3, or 4. You paid to go hear stereo. But when you went into the theater at that time, you walked in off the street, but you were in a different world. See, everybody can take their DVD and put their pajamas on and push play. So what?
Right.
But when you remove yourself and you go into a beautiful theater,
right,
and then they show you something that really looks good,
right,
you're in a different world. And that was part of my entertainment as a kid.
And
I loved it.
That is one thing, you know, especially in a day where now we can pick up our computers and watch the movies on computers.
Right.
Nothing beats, you know, the screen in the theater.
That's right.
So hopefully that won't get lost as well.
I hope not. But it was another part of Cinemascope. We already talked about Cinerama. Cinemascope was called the poor man's Cinerama because it wasn't quite as wide. But there were a huge number of Cinemascope films. And then the Panavision company started making anamorphic lenses that were better than Cinemascope lenses. So Cinemascope and Panavision are very similar, but they're not the same.
Okay.
Don't worry about that. If you find a Panavision film, Robert Wise, The Sand Pebbles, is a Panavision film. Mr. Wise knew the shots.
Wow.
Watch it. Even turned off the sound or something. You can take Sound of Music. Everybody's seen it. I don't want to see it anymore. Turn the sound down and watch the shots.
Right, but you know, the sign of a great director is if you can turn off the sound and still follow the story. You know what's happening. So
Mr. Wise was that good.
Exactly.
Try it on West Side Story.
Okay.
Everybody's seen West Side Story. I don't see it anymore. Turn down the sound.
Okay. All right. Well, Bill, we got to wrap it up, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for having me.
Bill, it's my pleasure. Thanks again for coming on the show. As always, giving your great input. I appreciate it, Sensei.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. All right. That's all for this episode, folks. I'd like to thank my guest, Bill Calder, for dropping jewels in regards to Cinemascope, as well as film critic Jeffrey Lyles and enthusiast Chris Oxenford for coming on the show. You can check out Mr. Lyles' reviews at www.lylesmoviefiles.com. Don't forget to drop us a line at picturelockshow@gmail.com. And check out the website, www.picturelockshow.com. And if you enjoy tweeting, that kind of thing, tweet us at PictureLock Show. Until next time, I hope you stay locked on film.